In the glittering heart of Seoul's Gangnam district, where glass towers reach toward the sky like steel and concrete dreams, there existed a world most people never knew about. A world where wealthy families played games with other people's lives, where money could buy almost anything, including heartbreak. Jung Tae-hyun knew this world intimately. At 28, he was what some might call a professional heartbreaker, though he preferred the term relationship consultant. For the right price, he would approach someone, make them fall in love with him, and then disappear from their lives, leaving behind carefully orchestrated devastation. It was a cruel profession, but it paid well, and Tae-hyun had convinced himself long ago that he was simply providing a service, teaching people hard lessons about trust and love that they would inevitably learn anyway. He was exceptionally good at his job. Tall and lean with sharp features that could shift from charming to mysterious, depending on what the situation required, Tae-hyun had perfected the art of becoming exactly what each target needed him to be. He could be the sensitive artist for a lonely writer, the ambitious businessman for a career-driven woman, or the reformed bad boy for someone looking to save a wounded soul. His success rate was perfect. In 3 years of doing this work, he had never failed to complete a contract. He was methodical, professional, and most importantly, completely emotionally detached. He never allowed himself to feel anything real for his targets. It was rule number 1 in his line of work. Until the day he received a contract that would change everything. The client was Choi Min-jun, the heir to one of Korea's largest pharmaceutical companies. Min-jun was everything Tae-hyun despised about his wealthy clients. Spoiled, entitled, and cruel in the casual way that only people who had never faced real consequences could be. They met at an upscale restaurant in Cheongdam-dong where Min-jun laid out his request over expensive whiskey and Wagyu beef. "Her name is Park So-young," Min-jun said, sliding a photograph across the pristine white tablecloth. "She's 26, works as a children's book illustrator, lives in a modest apartment in Hongdae. Sweet, naive, believes in true love and all that romantic nonsense." Tae-hyun glanced at the photograph without much interest. He had learned not to study his targets too closely before meeting them. It made the job easier if they remained abstractions rather than real people, but something about this particular photo made him pause. The woman in the picture had a genuine smile, the kind that reached her eyes and made her entire face light up. She was pretty in an understated way, with long hair and a sundress that suggested someone who cared more about comfort than fashion. "What's your relationship to her?" Tae-hyun asked, though he could already guess the answer. Min-jun's expression darkened. "She used to date my younger brother, Jin-woo. Sweet little Jin-woo actually thought he was going to marry her. Can you imagine? A chaebol heir marrying some nobody artist who makes children's books for a living." Tae-hyun had heard this story countless times before. Rich family disapproves of son's choice in women, hires Tae-hyun to prove that the woman is just after money or will abandon their precious heir when someone better comes along. "Your parents want her out of the picture," Tae-hyun said. "It wasn't a question." "Actually, my parents don't know about this," Min-jun replied with a cold smile. "Jin-woo and I have never gotten along. He's always been the favorite, the good son who could do no wrong. But if his precious girlfriend breaks his heart, if she leaves him for another man, well, it might just break sweet Jin-woo's spirit, permanently, and that would leave more of the family inheritance for me." This was new. Usually, Tae-hyun's clients claimed to be protecting their family or teaching someone a lesson. This was pure, calculated cruelty, and it made his stomach turn. But the money Min-jun was offering was more than he had ever been paid for a single job. Enough to set him up for years, maybe even enough to get out of this business entirely. "The usual terms," Tae-hyun said finally. "Make her fall in love with me, then break her heart publicly and completely. 3 months maximum." 2 months, Min-jun countered. "Jin-woo is planning to propose on her birthday in 8 weeks. I want her thoroughly destroyed before then." Tae-hyun nodded, hating himself, but already mentally calculating how he would approach Park So-young. Half payment up front, half when the job is complete. "Done," Minjun raised his glass in a mock toast. To breaking hearts and breaking spirits. Taehyun clinked glasses with him, but the whiskey tasted like ash in his mouth. 3 days later, Taehyun stood outside a small cafe in Hongdae, studying his target through the window. According to his research, Park So-young came here every Tuesday and Thursday morning at exactly 9:30 a.m., ordered the same vanilla latte with oat milk, and spent an hour sketching in a worn leather notebook while she drank her coffee. She was even prettier in person than in her photograph, but what struck Taehyun most was how genuinely content she seemed. She smiled at the elderly cafe owner when she ordered, said thank you to the young barista who brought her coffee, and even waved at a stray cat that had wandered up to the window. There was something unself-conscious about her happiness that Taehyun found both foreign and fascinating. He had planned to approach her today, to engineer a meet-cute by spilling coffee near her table, or asking to share her table during the busy morning rush. Instead, he found himself simply watching her work. She was illustrating what appeared to be a children's book, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration as she drew what looked like a family of rabbits having a picnic under a cherry blossom tree. When she looked up and caught him staring through the window, Taehyun's first instinct was to walk away. But So-young did something unexpected. She smiled and waved at him, the same friendly gesture she had given to the stray cat. Before he could think better of it, Taehyun found himself walking into the cafe. "Excuse me," he said, approaching her table with what he hoped was an appropriately sheepish expression. "I'm sorry if this is weird, but I'm a freelance journalist, and I couldn't help but notice your illustrations. They're beautiful. Are you working on a children's book?" So-young's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Oh, thank you. Yes, it's about a family of rabbits who learn about different seasons. I'm hoping to get it published, but for now, I just enjoy creating the stories." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Taehyun found himself smiling more genuinely than he had in months. "That's wonderful. I actually write freelance articles about local artists and creators. Would you mind if I interviewed you sometime? I think my readers would love to hear about your work." This was his planned cover story. The struggling journalist angle had worked well with creative types in the past, but as So-young's eyes widened with excitement, Taehyun felt an unfamiliar twist of guilt in his chest. "Really? You'd want to write about my work? But I'm nobody special, just someone who draws pictures for books that might never get published." "Sometimes the most interesting stories come from people who think they're nobody special," Taehyun replied, and was surprised to realize he meant it. They talked for another hour. So-young told him about her dream of becoming a published children's book author, about the part-time job she worked at a local bookstore to pay rent, about the cooking classes she took on weekends because she wanted to learn how to make traditional Korean dishes like her grandmother used to make. She asked him about his journalism, and Taehyun found himself spinning elaborate stories about articles he had supposedly written, publications he had supposedly worked for. When they finally parted ways, So-young gave him her phone number and insisted he call her about the interview. Taehyun walked away from the cafe feeling strangely unsettled. In his previous jobs, the initial meeting was always calculated, strategic, but there had been something effortless about talking to So-young, something that felt almost real. He shook off the feeling. It was just because she was different from his usual targets. Most of the women he was hired to deceive were wealthy, sophisticated, often as calculating as the men who hired him to target them. So-young's genuine kindness was novel, but it didn't change anything. He had a job to do. Over the next 2 weeks, Taehyun fell into a routine with So-young. They met for coffee twice a week, ostensibly so he could conduct his interview, but their conversations quickly moved beyond her artwork. She told him about her childhood in a small town outside Seoul, about her parents who ran a small restaurant and had never quite understood her artistic dreams, but supported her anyway. She talked about her relationship with Jinwoo with such obvious love and affection that Taehyun had to excuse himself to the bathroom to collect himself. "Jinwoo is wonderful," she said one Thursday morning, her face glowing as she spoke about him. "He's so different from what I expected when I first met him. I knew he came from money, but he's not arrogant or entitled at all. He's kind and funny, and he actually listens when I talk about my dreams. He even bought me a whole set of professional illustration supplies for my birthday last year." Taehyun nodded and smiled, making appropriate comments, all while mentally noting how he could use this information to drive a wedge between them. But increasingly, he found himself hoping their conversations would move to other topics. "What about you?" So Young asked one day, catching him off guard. "Do you have someone special? You seem like the type who would be a wonderful boyfriend, thoughtful, interested in other people's passions, a good listener." Taehyun nearly choked on his coffee. No one had ever described him as thoughtful or wonderful. "No, I'm not seeing anyone. My work keeps me pretty busy, traveling around for stories and interviews." "That sounds lonely," So Young said softly, and there was such genuine concern in her voice that Taehyun felt that unfamiliar twist of guilt again, stronger this time. By the end of the third week, Taehyun realized he was in trouble. He looked forward to their meetings with an anticipation that had nothing to do with his professional objectives. He found himself thinking about things So Young had said, wondering what she was working on, hoping she was having a good day. When she texted him funny observations about her daily life, or photos of illustrations she was working on, he caught himself smiling before he remembered that this was all supposed to be fake. The wake-up call came when Minjun called him for a progress report. "It's been 3 weeks, Minjun said without preamble. "Please tell me you've made significant progress with the target." Taehyun was sitting in his apartment, looking at a small cactus So Young had given him the previous week. She said it reminded her of him, strong and resilient, but surprisingly cute if you look at it the right way. He had been staring at the ridiculous little plant for 20 minutes, remembering the way she had smiled when she gave it to him. "She trusts me," he said finally. "We've established a friendship. I'm ready to move to the next phase." "Good. I want her completely infatuated within 2 weeks and completely destroyed by her birthday. Jinwoo has been talking about proposing, and I need her emotionally unavailable when he tries." After Minjun hung up, Taehyun sat in his empty apartment and tried to remember why he had thought this job was a good idea. The money was excellent, yes, but for the first time in his career, he was beginning to understand the real cost of what he did. The next phase of his plan required him to transition from friend to potential romantic interest. He had done this dozens of times before. A lingering touch here, more intimate conversation there, carefully orchestrated moments of vulnerability that would make the target see him as more than just a friend. But when he tried to implement these tactics with So Young, something went wrong. Not wrong exactly, but different. When he took her hand while they were walking through Namsan Park, supposedly to help her up a steep path, the contact sent an electric shock through his entire system. When he looked into her eyes while she was telling him about her favorite childhood memory, he forgot completely why he was supposed to be listening and found himself genuinely moved by her story about helping her grandmother bake cookies for the entire neighborhood during Chuseok. When So Young started looking at him with something warmer than friendship in her eyes, Taehyun felt simultaneously triumphant and sick to his stomach. "I have to tell you something," she said one evening as they sat by the Han River, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. "I know this might be weird since you're supposed to be interviewing me for your article, but I think I'm starting to have feelings for you." This was the moment Taehyun had been working toward for weeks. This was when he was supposed to reciprocate her feelings, make her fall completely in love with him, and then prepare for the devastating betrayal that would destroy her faith in love forever. Instead, he found himself unable to speak. "I know, it's complicated," So Young continued, misinterpreting his silence. "I'm with Jinwoo, and I do love him, but what I feel for you is different. Stronger, maybe. Is that terrible of me?" "So Young," Taehyun started, but couldn't finish the sentence. What was he supposed to say? That yes, she should leave, her loving boyfriend for him. That he was manipulating her feelings as part of an elaborate scheme to destroy her happiness. That he was falling in love with her too, and had no idea what to do about it. "You don't have to say anything," So Young said quickly. "I just wanted you to know I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I thought you should know, even if nothing can come of it." That night, Taehyun called in sick to his part-time cover job and spent hours walking aimlessly through Seoul's neon-lit streets. For the first time in 3 years, he seriously considered breaking a contract. He could disappear, leave Seoul, start over somewhere else. But he had taken Minjun's money, and men like Minjun didn't forget debts. More than that, though, he couldn't bear the thought of leaving So Young without any explanation. She would blame herself, would think she had misread his feelings or done something wrong. The thought of her crying over him, of her bright smile dimming because of his cowardice, was unbearable. He decided to see the job through, but to modify his approach. Instead of the usual devastating public betrayal, he would orchestrate a gentler ending. He would gradually pull away, make himself less available until So Young realized their connection wasn't as strong as she had thought. She would go back to Jinwoo, maybe a little sad, but not destroyed. It wasn't what Minjun was paying for, but it was the best Taehyun could do. But So Young made even this impossible. As Taehyun began to distance himself, cancelling plans and responding less enthusiastically to her messages, So Young didn't give up. Instead, she became more attentive, more caring. She noticed that he seemed stressed and started bringing him home-cooked meals. She remembered small details about things he had mentioned in passing and surprised him with thoughtful gestures. A book by an author he had said he enjoyed. A scarf she had knitted herself when he mentioned being cold. "I know you're going through something," she said one afternoon, when he had been particularly distant. "You don't have to tell me what it is, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together." Her unwavering kindness was breaking him. Every day, Taehyun felt the walls he had built around his heart crumbling a little more. He caught himself wanting to tell her the truth, wanting to confess everything and beg for her forgiveness, but he knew that the truth would hurt her even more than his planned deception. With 2 weeks left until So Young's birthday, Minjun called again. "I've been watching," he said, and there was a cold satisfaction in his voice. She broke up with Jinwoo yesterday. Apparently she told him she had feelings for someone else. "You've done excellent work." Taehyun felt like he had been punched in the stomach. So Young had broken up with Jinwoo because of him, because of feelings he had manipulated her into having. The guilt was overwhelming. "Now comes the fun part," Minjun continued. "I want the breakup to be public and humiliating. Take her somewhere romantic. Let her think you're going to confess your love, and then destroy her. Tell her it was all fake, that you were paid to seduce her, that someone like her could never really interest someone like you. I want her to doubt every relationship she ever has after this." "That seems excessive," Taehyun said carefully. "The objective was to separate her from your brother, and that's been accomplished." "The objective," Minjun said coldly, "is whatever I say it is. You're being paid very well to follow my instructions exactly. I hope you're not developing an unprofessional attachment to the target." After the call ended, Taehyun sat in his apartment and stared at the cactus So Young had given him. In 4 weeks, she had become the brightest part of his life. Her laugh was the first thing he thought about when he woke up, and the last thing he remembered before falling asleep. The idea of deliberately crushing her spirit, of extinguishing that luminous joy that made her so special, was unthinkable. But he had taken the money, he had signed the contract, and men like Minjun had ways of making life very difficult for people who crossed them. Taehyun spent the next 3 days planning what he told himself would be the gentlest possible betrayal. He would take So Young somewhere private, tell her that he couldn't continue their relationship because he was leaving Seoul for work, and hope that she would heal quickly. It wasn't what Minjun wanted, but it was all Taehyun could bring himself to do. But when he called So Young to arrange their final meeting, she surprised him again. "I have something wonderful to tell you," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I got a call from a publisher today. They want to publish my rabbit book. They saw some of my illustrations online, and they love my work. This is everything I've ever dreamed of. Taehyun's heart sank. She was happy, genuinely happy. And he was about to destroy that happiness forever. That's amazing, So Young. You deserve this. I couldn't have done it without you, she said softly. Talking to you about my dreams, having someone believe in my work, it gave me the confidence to put myself out there. You changed my life, Taehyun. That evening, they met at the same cafe where they had first encountered each other. So Young was radiant with joy, talking animatedly about her book deal, her plans for future projects, her hopes for her career. She was more beautiful than Taehyun had ever seen her, and the knowledge that he was about to shatter her happiness was like a physical weight on his chest. There's something I need to tell you, he said, when she finally paused for breath. Me too, she said, reaching across the table to take his hand. Taehyun, I think I'm falling in love with you, really, truly in love. I know it's crazy, and I know it's fast, but I've never felt anything like this before. You make me want to be braver, to dream bigger. You make me feel like the best version of myself. Taehyun looked into her shining eyes and felt something break inside his chest. This was the moment. This was when he was supposed to deliver his devastating blow. To reveal that everything between them had been a lie, to break her heart so completely that she would never recover. Instead, he found himself saying, I'm falling in love with you too. The words left his mouth before he could stop them, and he realized with startling clarity that they were completely true. Somewhere in the past month, between her terrible coffee jokes and her passionate discussions about children's literature and her habit of talking to stray cats, Taehyun had fallen completely, irrevocably in love with Park So Young. Really? She whispered, tears of joy filling her eyes. Really, he confirmed. And when she leaned across the table to kiss him, Taehyun forgot about contracts and clients and consequences. For a perfect moment, there was only So Young's soft lips against his and the impossible, wonderful realization that she loved him back. It wasn't until later that night, alone in his apartment with So Young's laughter still echoing in his ears, that the full weight of his situation hit him. He was in love with the woman he had been hired to destroy, and she was in love with him. But their entire relationship was built on lies. She thought he was a struggling journalist who had interviewed her by chance. She had no idea that he had been paid to target her, that every moment of their courtship had been orchestrated by someone who wanted to hurt her. Even worse, Min Jun was expecting results. In less than a week, he would want proof that So Young had been publicly humiliated and heartbroken. When that didn't happen, Min Jun would likely investigate, and it wouldn't take him long to figure out that Taehyun had failed to complete his assignment. Taehyun spent 3 sleepless nights trying to figure out a solution. He could disappear, but that would leave So Young confused and heartbroken without explanation. He could tell her the truth, but that would destroy her trust in him and probably in love itself. He could go through with the original plan, but the thought of deliberately hurting the woman he loved was impossible. On the 4th night, his phone rang. Min Jun. I've been very patient, the voice on the other end said without preamble. But my patience is running out. Tomorrow is her birthday. Jin Woo is planning to try to win her back with some grand romantic gesture. I need her completely destroyed before he gets the chance. She's already broken up with him, Taehyun pointed out. Your objective has been met. My objective will be met when Park So Young is so heartbroken she never trusts another man again. Tomorrow, Taehyun, don't disappoint me. The next morning was So Young's birthday. She had planned a small celebration with a few friends at a restaurant in Itaewon, and she had invited Taehyun to join them. It was supposed to be a happy day, a celebration of another year of life and new beginnings with her book deal and their relationship. Instead, Taehyun woke up knowing it might be the last day he ever saw her. He had made his decision sometime, during the night, in the quiet hours when the city slept, and he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't destroy So Young, But he also couldn't continue their relationship built on lies. There was only one option left. He would tell her the truth. Not Minjun's version of the truth, designed to inflict maximum damage, but the real truth. He would tell her about the contract, about the money, about Minjun's cruel scheme. But he would also tell her about falling in love with her, about how she had changed him, about how he wanted to be worthy of the love she had given him. She would probably hate him. She would definitely leave him. But at least she would know that her capacity for love, her trust in people, her beautiful open heart, none of that had been foolish or naive. She would know that the love she felt was real, even if the circumstances that brought them together were false. That afternoon, before So-young's birthday dinner, Taehyun asked her to meet him at Namsan Park, at the spot where they had first held hands. The autumn air was crisp, and Seoul spread out below them in a tapestry of golden light and lengthening shadows. "You seem nervous," So-young observed, taking his hand as they sat on a bench overlooking the city. "Is everything okay?" "So-young," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to the whole story before you say anything." She nodded, concern flickering in her eyes. Taehyun told her everything. About his profession, about the contract with Minjun, about the plan, to make her fall in love and then devastate her. He told her about Jinwoo's brother's jealousy and cruelty, about the money he had been paid to destroy her happiness. As he spoke, he watched So-young's face change. The warm affection in her eyes gradually gave way to shock, then hurt, then something that looked like betrayal. By the time he finished explaining the original plan, tears were streaming down her cheeks. "But here's the part I need you to understand," he continued desperately. "None of it went according to plan. I was supposed to be immune to you, supposed to stay detached. But you changed everything. Every moment we spent together, every conversation, every smile. It was all real for me. I fell in love with you so young, really completely in love, and I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't hurt you." So-young was silent for a long moment, staring out at the city below them. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Was any of it real? Our first meeting at the cafe?" "Planned," Taehyun admitted, hating himself. "The interview, story, a lie. Your interest in my artwork." Taehyun hesitated. "That became real. Everything became real, So-young. My feelings for you, my admiration for your talent, my desire to see you succeed, all of that was real. But it started as a lie," she said flatly. "Yes." So-young stood up abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself as if she were cold. "I need to think. I can't do this right now." "So-young, please. Don't," she said, holding up a hand to stop him. "Don't say anything else. I need time." She walked away without looking back, leaving Taehyun alone on the bench as the sun set over Seoul. He had told her the truth, but he wasn't sure if it had been an act of courage or cowardice. Either way, he had probably lost her forever. That evening, Taehyun didn't go to So-young's birthday dinner. Instead, he returned to his apartment and began packing. He would leave Seoul, disappear before Minjun realized he had failed to complete the contract. It was cowardly, but it was all. He had left. He was folding clothes into a suitcase when his phone rang. So-young's name appeared on the screen, and his heart stopped. "Hello," he answered, afraid to hope. "I've been thinking all evening," she said, her voice tired but steady, "about what you told me, about us, about everything." "So-young, I'm so sorry." "Let me finish," she interrupted. "What you did was wrong. The lying, the manipulation, all of it. I should hate you." "You should," he agreed quietly. "But here's the thing I keep coming back to," she continued. "You didn't have to tell me. You could have just disappeared, or broken up with me gently, or even gone through with the original plan. But you told me the truth, even knowing I would probably leave you." Taehyun closed his eyes, hardly daring to breathe. "I think," So Young said slowly, that someone who was truly heartless wouldn't have been able to do that. I think someone who was just using me wouldn't have fallen in love with me. And I think someone who didn't really care about me wouldn't have risked everything, to be honest. What are you saying? Taehyun whispered. I'm saying that I believe you when you say your feelings became real. I'm saying that what I felt with you was real too, and that doesn't just disappear because of how it started. She paused, and he could hear her take a shaky breath. I'm saying that I think people can change, and that love can grow in unexpected places, and that maybe we deserve a chance to see what we could be if we start over with complete honesty. Taehyun sank onto his bed, overwhelmed by a relief so profound it left him speechless. But, So Young continued, and her voice grew firmer, if we're going to try this, everything has to be different. No more lies, no more secrets. I want to know everything about you. Your real name, your real past, your real dreams for the future. And you need to find a way to make this right with Minjun and Jinwoo. My real name is Jung Taehyun, he said immediately. Everything else I told you about my past was mostly lies, but I'll tell you all of it. And you're right about making things right. I already have a plan. The next morning, Taehyun did something he had never done in 3 years of professional heartbreaking. He returned a client's money. He transferred every cent Minjun had paid him back into his account, along with a message explaining that the contract was terminated and that he was withdrawing from his profession permanently. Minjun's response was immediate and furious. Threats, accusations, promises of retaliation. But for the first time in years, Taehyun felt no fear. He had found something worth fighting for, something worth changing his entire life for. More difficult was the conversation with Jinwoo. Taehyun knew he couldn't tell him about his brother's involvement. That would destroy their family relationship forever. But he could tell him that he had pursued So Young deliberately, knowing she was in a relationship, and that he was sorry for the pain his actions had caused. Jinwoo was hurt and angry, as he had every right to be. But he was also, Taehyun realized, a genuinely good person who ultimately wanted So Young to be happy, even if it wasn't with him. Take care of her, Jinwoo said finally, after Taehyun had apologized for the 3rd time. She deserves someone who will love her completely and honestly. If you can't be that person, then let her go. I can be that person, Taehyun said, quietly. I want to be that person. Rebuilding their relationship from a foundation of honesty was harder than either of them had anticipated. So Young had moments of doubt. Times when she wondered if she was being foolish to trust someone who had deceived her so completely. Taehyun had moments of panic. Times when he worried that he wasn't capable of the kind of genuine, selfless love So Young deserved. But slowly, day by day, they learned to trust each other again. Taehyun told So Young about his childhood, about the poverty and instability that had led him to value money over morality. So Young told him about her fears and insecurities, about how his deception had shaken her confidence in her own judgment. They went to couples counseling. They had long, difficult conversations about trust and forgiveness. They established new boundaries and new promises. And gradually, impossibly, they fell in love all over again. This time with their real selves, with full knowledge of each other's flaws and failures and capacity for growth. 6 months after that terrible, wonderful day in Namsan Park, Taehyun proposed to So Young in the same cafe where they had first met, not with elaborate romance or grand gestures, but with simple honesty. I know I don't deserve you, he said, kneeling beside her chair as other customers pretended not to stare. I know I hurt you, and I know there are probably better men out there who would love you without all the complications I bring. But I love you with everything I am, and I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of the love you've given me. So Young cried as she said yes, and so did Taehyun, and so did the elderly cafe owner who had been watching their story unfold from behind the counter. Their wedding was small and simple, attended by So Young's family and the few friends who, had stuck by them through the difficult months of rebuilding their relationship. Jinwoo even came, bringing a wedding gift and his genuine blessing for their happiness. During his vows, Taehyun spoke about redemption, about how love had taught him to be a better man than he had ever thought possible. During her vows, So Young spoke about forgiveness, about how sometimes the most broken people are capable of the most beautiful love. Years later, when people asked how they met, Taehyun and So Young would share a look and smile. They had learned that love stories don't always begin with meet-cutes and fairy tale romance. Sometimes they begin with deception and betrayal, and the long, difficult work of learning to trust again. But the most beautiful love stories, they discovered, are often the ones where people choose each other, not despite their flaws, but because of their shared commitment to becoming better versions of themselves. Taehyun never worked as a professional heartbreaker again. Instead, he used his understanding of human psychology to become a relationship counselor, helping other couples navigate the complexities of love and trust. So Young's children's books became bestsellers, filled with stories about characters who made mistakes but learned to do better. And every morning, over coffee in their small apartment filled with plants and artwork and the comfortable chaos,